everyone. I'm Nicole from Wild for Change, and welcome to AAA Radio. Today, we're speaking with Jodie Wiederkehr, founder of Chicago Alliance for Animals. Chicago Alliance for Animals is a volunteer grassroots animal advocacy organization that began in 2015. The first goal of Chicago Alliance for Animals was to ban horse carriages in downtown Chicago. And in 2017, the organization began diligently documenting how the horses were treated by their handlers, as well as the horses' workloads, by volunteers who spent countless hours observing the horses. With this documentation and persistence, an official horse carriage ban went into effect in January of 2021. I would like to read a quote by Jodie that represents the effectiveness and efficiency of Chicago Alliance for Animals. Quote, "As you likely know, we banned horse carriages and shut down puppy mill pet stores in the third largest city in the U.S. without any paid staff, any accidents or fatalities, any celebrity support, and with very little funding." End quote. For Chicago Alliance for Animals, the intention is simple and focused: to end suffering of animals and support their freedom. A warm welcome and thank you for being here, Jodie.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You are a celebrity in my eyes for everything that you have done and are still doing for animals around Chicago.
Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to start off with, how did you become interested in getting a ban on horse carriages in downtown Chicago?
When Chicago Alliance for Animals formed in May of 2015, we had a couple meetings, and it was actually my idea that horse carriages be kind of one of our first campaigns, because I saw it. Well, first of all, I've always hated seeing horse carriages, wherever I've been, when I would go visit New York City. So it was something that I always wanted to see end, but I also saw it as something doable, something that, in a sense, low hanging fruit compared to bigger issues. So I suggested it, and we agreed as a team that horse carriages would be one of our first campaign strategies. And we also had talked about animal circuses, kind of working on both animals used for entertainment. And that's where it started. Yeah.
Wow, that's great. And I smirked to myself as you were saying it was low hanging fruit, because for many people like New York, still trying to get that ban going into effect. And your outlook was like, yeah, this is doable. We can get this done.
Right.
That's
And one thing we thought about is the fact that this is something that everybody can see. When they're out working the horses, it's not a hidden cruelty, unlike meat production or slaughterhouses or animal experimentation. We cannot see what goes on behind the laboratory doors or behind the slaughterhouse walls. What happens to these horses, we all can see with our own eyes. And it was very important to learn Chicago's laws regarding the horse carriage trade. And we really, we used that to win, because we proved that the operators broke Chicago's law day in and day out. Every single time we documented the horses downtown, we witnessed and documented violations of the law.
Wow. That is pure diligence on your part. How many people besides yourself were out there documenting?
There were pretty much myself and three other dedicated volunteers. My colleagues Barbara, Paula, and Claudia. We would document them on a regular basis and take turns. Occasionally, we would work together and do full day-long documentation from 9-10 in the morning until about 1 in the morning, or as long as they were on the street. Because the law in Chicago is that they could only work the horses 6 hours in a 24-hour period. So what we realized we had to do was get down to the horse carriage stand at the start of their day, whenever they arrived, and literally stay there it was typically around 9:30, 10 in the morning when they'd start showing up. And we would stay downtown all day. We would take short breaks to get a bite to eat, but we documented them to prove to the city that these horses were not being taken back to the stable and replaced with a new horse. It was the same horse that arrived at 9:30 a.m. that was still on the street at 1 in the morning. So they were working these horses more than double what Chicago's law allowed. And in all honesty, I don't know of any other city that is doing this. And I've urged them to. It's one thing to go down and document violations, but you have to prove to your city officials that they're overworking them. And really the only way to do that is by staying down there the entire day, documenting, taking videos every time a horse comes back from a ride, and basically saying, this is, the horse with, whatever company's number 2 license plate. And this is the same horse with the same black splotch on his right side and the same, black carriage, whatever markings of the carriage or the horse or the driver, to prove that it's the same horse. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what we did. And I really encourage any other city working on bans to do this. It's not like any of us wanted to spend our Saturdays being down at the horse carriage stand all day, but that is really one of the things that I believe truly got us our ban, is we proved that they were being overworked, in addition to numerous other laws being violated.
That is tremendous amount of dedication. And, to go there on a Saturday, like you said, and spend, those countless hours there, just supporting those poor horses. And in a relatively short amount of time, you were able to get this ban into effect. And my thought process is because of all of your hard work and diligence between you and the other volunteers consistently always going there, and then having all of this information to give to our to our Chicago Council to show them that this is what's happening. You made it happen in a relatively short amount of time.
Right. I mean, we formed Chicago Alliance for Animals in 2015. And when we first started, we had monthly outreach where we would go down to the horse carriage stand and once a month have a peaceful educational demonstration where we handed out flyers to the public, held our signs, had a paper petition we urged people to sign. And then we would also urge those people who would come up to us to also, if they were local, we would ask them if they lived in Chicago. And if they were local, we'd urge them to contact their city council member and let them know they are their constituent and urge them to support a horse carriage ban. If they were not local, because the area is very much of a touristy area, we would urge them to contact the mayor and urge the mayor to support a horse carriage ban. We did this for 2.5 years. And then my colleague Barbara and I were at the National Animal Rights Conference in Washington, D.C. And we were sitting at our booth talking, and it was kind of a slow time. And we just were saying, our monthly outreach is not going to get us a ban. We're not doing enough. We have to pick up our game. And so we decided right then and there, we picked a day the following month in August to go down to the horse carriage stand in the morning and document. And so that was August of 2017. And I really say that's when our campaign officially started, because in August of 2017 is when we first started really watching them, trying to document any violations of Chicago's ordinance. And then shortly after that, we started doing what we called our daily action alerts, where we target a different city council member or the mayor or some official in Chicagoland, and we contact them. And so between those two strategies, I truly believe that is what got us to our ban 2.5 years later.
Amazing work, really.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm so thrilled that we no longer have to worry about that here, because it is horrific. And just recently there was another horse that I think died in New York City, being hit by cars, and it's just an awful way for any being to live. And so I'm very grateful for all the work that you've done.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Were you involved with finding the horses sanctuary once the ban came into effect?
Well, we were working on that part of our strategy throughout our campaign. However, it's not very easy to work on that without the ban. But we were putting out feelers to sanctuaries and to horse rescues and to private owners. And so what we did when the ban went, when we passed the ban in April, is I reached out to these sanctuaries and rescues that I had been communicating with and asked them to reach out to the owners of the carriage horses. There were three companies. Obviously, the carriage owners and carriage operators were not fans of me. So it would not make sense for me to reach out to them. So I urged there were about at least 4 different sanctuaries and rescues that, I provided them their phone numbers and email addresses, and they reached out and offered homes for any horses should they not be able to, care for them properly or feed them. Or unfortunately, only one of the companies responded to them with a simple no. And then the other 2 companies, to my knowledge, never responded to them. So we did everything we could. We had homes for every single horse, but at the end of the day, these horses are considered private property. Unfortunately, in our world, animals are considered property, and the owners refuse to relinquish the horses. So we were not able to get the horses to sanctuary, but that was not for lack of trying. We did everything in our possibility or our that we could to get them to forever safe homes, but the owners refused to let them go.
Oh, that's a shame. But
it is a shame, but I will say, sorry to interrupt, but to just finish my thought is obviously we all would have loved to see them go to sanctuary. But at the end of the day, we did end an abusive industry. And the biggest of the 3 companies that broke the law all the time had on their website, on the front page of their website, that they bred horses. And we all know how many horses in our world need homes. So what we did was we stopped that company from breeding horses.
And how did you do that?
Because they don't have a job.
Oh, okay.
So if they're breeding horses for, horses are expensive. The care and feeding is expensive. So like I said, by ending this industry in Chicago, we ended this company from breeding more horses into the world.
Yeah, you did amazing work, and there is a silver lining. You ended the abuse, and that was the best, I'm sure, the best day of their lives.
Yeah.
Instead of being subjected to heat and cold and just standing for hours on end on concrete, and it was so unnatural.
Yeah. And if any of the owners ever see this and they need homes for those horses, there are homes out there. I could reach out to 3 or 4 right away that would offer a home or 2 for horses. So there are homes out there if the homes are needed for Chicago's carriage horses.
Oh, thank you for putting that out there. And so after that, Chicago Alliance for Animals began working with the partnership to ban horse carriages worldwide, where you mentor advocates and effective advocacy for banning horse carriages. So can you just talk a little bit more about that and how that is going?
Sure. Yeah. So that's another thing that we formed in 2017. 2017 is kind of the year where it all started coming together, with the documenting of the violations and the daily action alerts. And then I formed the partnership in, I think it was October or November of 2017. Excuse me. Because I was starting, I'm sorry. I have a stupid scratchy cough.
Okay.
I was starting to kind of get a feel for what needed to be done, especially with documenting. I had to take a drink of water. I don't have COVID, but I get this dry cough.
Yeah, that's what I had a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, it's awful.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sorry about that. So that's why I wanted to form the partnership so I could work with activists and advocates in other cities and kind of share what we were doing in Chicago, and also, encourage them to share any tips or strategies that they have that work for them or have worked for them. And so I reached out. I did a lot of searching online to find any advocates in any other cities: New York, Dallas, Atlanta, um, St. Augustine in Florida, and just urge them to join this partnership, and let's share strategies. Let's help each other. Let's help do each other's actions, because horse carriages are considered a tourist industry, and that officials will say that the tourists love it. The fact is most tourists don't love it. There are people who do take rides, but we met so many people on the streets of Chicago who were from other countries and other cities that hated seeing the horses being exploited. So I would say the average tourist does not like to see animal exploitation. So I was very proud to start the partnership, and now we have I've got 3 or 4 very active cities. My New York City chapter is very active, as is Philadelphia and Dallas. My Philadelphia partners had a rally back in September at their city hall that I went to, and I spoke at the rally. And Philadelphia might be the next city to ban them.
Oh, that would be amazing.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm working with them, and I'm there for them, any way I can help. But they are doing great things on their own, meeting with officials, and constantly pushing their city council and the mayor to do the right thing here, and stop the suffering. And so, yeah.
That's really cool because it's almost like it catches like on fire. When you at least have one city that's already done it, then it helps build momentum for other communities to do the same thing.
Right. And anytime there's an accident or a fatality, which happens nearly on a weekly basis, and in cities where horses are still forced to share the streets with motor vehicles, we share those stories in our daily action alerts and urge the officials to, introduce legislation and get this done before a horse collapses and dies on your streets, or before a human has to be sent to the emergency room. Because
Right.
that's not good for tourism.
No, it's not. And I don't think people even, generally you wouldn't even think about that, a person can get hurt as well.
Oh,
Being in
yes. And I've got Right. And I've got a ton of the partnership website is kept up to date very regularly. Anytime there's a new accident or fatality or success or petition, we add it to the partnership's website. And so it's the most current, up to date, basically database of everything related to horse carriages. So it's I have so many stories. Just a year ago, um, 70, I believe he was 74, 75-year-old man, fell off a horse carriage and had to be airlifted to a hospital because he had a spinal injury. And then around the same time, a 5-year-old boy fell out of carriage and got ran over by a horse carriage in Niagara Falls.
Oh, wow.
So what it comes down to is these are 1,000+ pound or more horses that are prey animals. So the littlest thing can make a carriage horse startle. I remember one time in New York City, somebody opened an umbrella and the horse took off, and it sent people to the emergency room. So,
Yeah, it spooked so
basically when
easily.
one of these animals gets scared and they take off, anybody in their wake, it can be in real danger, whether that's a motorist, a pedestrian, a child, or the people in the carriage and the driver of the carriage. So some people think this is just like a nice, wholesome, activity, but it can be a real risk to anybody in that horse's way.
Yeah, exactly. And, thanks for opening up my eyes and listeners' eyes about the fatalities or injuries that people can incur with this. And I did check out the website, And yeah, it's amazing how many accidents have happened. And, um, I can appreciate that that website is up to date and it shows everything that's current. And it's sad. It's really sad to see that and that
Yeah.
it's still happening, in so many different cities. But
A lot
thanks
of
to
times,
you.
a lot of times the city will pass a ban because of an accident. Salt
Right.
Lake City is a good example. They had a horse collapse in the middle of a very hot summer, and um, they got the horse back to the stable. They got footage of this horse being moved with a forklift.
Oh,
It was just, I mean, the footage is very, it's hard to see. Um, but that is why Salt Lake City passed their ban. And,
mhm.
no city should, no officials should wait until there's animal cruelty or animal abuse or, uh, a child or an adult be suffering because of this really archaic activity when there's so many other plenty of fun things to do in our cities without exploiting animals.
Right, right. And like you said, you don't want to wait till an accident happens to make this ban go into effect because it really isn't fair to the horses in the first place. And then just waiting for something to happen to a horse or a person is unfortunate if you wait that long.
Right.
Yeah. Well, kudos to you and thank you for all the work that you do with that and, helping other advocates do the same in other cities. And hopefully Philadelphia will get that ban into effect real quick.
I hope so.
Yeah, yeah, that
Yeah.
would be amazing. Now, Chicago Alliance for Animals also has two current campaigns. One is for a tortoise named Spur and a coyote named Rocky. Can you give listeners some background about what's happening to these two animals?
Sure. Both campaigns started, well, Spurs campaign started last October, and we started working on Rocky in January. So that's going on a year. And so Spur is a sulcata African tortoise who has who was stolen from her homeland and trafficked to Illinois. And she has been stuck in a tiny barren display case in a pet store in Lincolnwood, which is just northwest of Chicago. It's not too, it's actually just a few miles from where I live on the north side of Chicago. Um, and she has been in this display case for more than 30 years. And all she has is hay. She doesn't have the ability to dig, which is something sulcata tortoises do. Um, she, when we first started our campaign, we would go and take video. She's right outside the glass display case, so we can take video of her. And she would see me if I walked from one end of her cage to the other, which I would say is maybe 4 by 6 feet. She would try to climb up on the side of the cage, which is tiled, like a bathtub tile. And
Hmm.
she's got these big claws and she tries to climb up and she just falls. And it was heartbreaking. And if I walked to the other edge, she would follow me and try to climb up and then fall. And so, yeah, so in addition to Spur, who can live, these animals can live to be 100 years old, give or take. She's been in this cage for more than 30 years, and we believe she's approximately 40 years old. But she could live it there another 50, 60 years, which would just, it's tragic as it is. But it would be really tragic if that was her entire life. She
Yeah.
doesn't get to feel sunshine on her back or her shell. She doesn't get to feel a breeze. She doesn't get to feel earth under her feet. We have been told that sulcatas are very um, solo animals. So, we don't know if she'd want companionship, but, she doesn't have a choice. I mean, maybe they are independent animals, but maybe she would like companionship. The other thing is we've never once seen water in her enclosure. Now, we've been told that sulcatas get the majority of their moisture from their diet, and that is true. However, she also, could be given a choice. We've never once seen drinking water in her cage. But I'll put all together, it's just wrong. And she lives under artificial light, and her natural habitat would be a very hot, dry climate. Yet she is in this display case in a store where there's multiple other species of animals. There's rabbits, there's fish, there's guinea pigs, there's um, prairie dogs, there's opossums, and all kinds of wild animals. And there's rock music. Now,
Oh,
I'm a big fan of rock music, but these animals are in this very artificial environment where they cannot get away from this music. They can't get away from artificial light. And because she's in the store, they can't keep it at, I don't honestly know. I knew at one point, but off the top of my head, the exact temperature, which is appropriate for her species, but they can't keep it at that temperature because there's other species that it'd be too hot for them.
right.
So, the store sells all these wild animals, and the Village of Lincolnwood has a law on their books that states that no, nobody in the Village of Lincolnwood can keep a naturally wild animal. So we started testifying at their board meetings last December, and because of our work, they put it on their March agenda, and they voted to waive their own law. They waived their own law, which is keeping Spur in this extreme captivity.
Do we know why they decided to waive their own law to
They,
just benefit other beings?
well, I mean, they didn't really explain it. They just voted on it. And
Oh,
uh, basically, two of them voted to enforce their law, and there are six trustees. And so it was a majority vote to waive the law. And because they waived their law, that keeps Spur in this immense captivity. Now, had they voted to enforce their own law, it wouldn't require Spur to go to sanctuary, which we do have two sanctuaries willing to take Spur and give her a forever home. And one is in Arizona called the Desert Oasis Turtle and Tortoise Sanctuary. And so it would be a much more natural habitat for a sulcata tortoise than Chicagoland's cold winters.
and she's up
Um,
against a window in the winter.
yep. Mm-hmm. Yes.
I
And
think
um, had they enforced that law, it would force the owner of the store to remove Spur from the store, from the Village of Lincolnwood. And we would hope that that would spur him, pardon the pun, to get her to sanctuary. But so that's something we continue to speak at their board meetings twice a month. The first and third Tuesdays of the month we go, and we have 3 minutes to make our case, and they listen to us. And it's something we did with the horse carriage campaign. We would go every month to the city council meeting and testify in support of the horse carriage ban. So thing is legislation, especially humane legislation, does not happen quickly. It's a process, and you got to just stick with it, and we will.
yeah, and that's you sure show you can demonstrate how it's done to be persistent, be patient, and continue the support for the animals. And it's not easy because you want to see them free now, and but the thing is you can't give up.
Right.
Um, Now, is Spur just a showcase there? She's not for sale.
She's not for sale. The owner claims she is her pet. I'm sorry, that she is his pet. But in all honesty, I believe that she is a prop. She's a prop to get people to come into a store. If kids see Spur, it's not often you see a huge, 100-pound tortoise in a window. She's spectacular.
Yeah, she's
And
beautiful.
so I believe she is used as a prop. Yes. And she's not there for her benefit or for her welfare.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
right. She's just being exploited, basically.
exactly. Yep.
Yeah,
And
I
we
saw the video of her. I was watching it, and it made my stomach turn because, like you said, she's in this very small enclosure and tile, and it's just so unnatural. And for her to be right next to the window and, listening to music that's not even soothing, you know, it's
yeah,
really unfortunate. But thank you for the work that you were doing for her.
thank you. And we did get an interview and an article um, ran in the Chicago Tribune a couple weeks ago. And the owner actually stated that if she were to go to sanctuary, she would develop an infection in her shell. So she can't go to sanctuary. I reached out to a few veterinarians, urging, to try to get them to maybe follow up regarding this because I'm not a tortoise expert. I'll admit that right here and now. However, two veterinarians have told me that's a that doesn't make any sense. I mean, how she was able to be trafficked and I'm assuming flown here from Africa
Right.
to a tiny store in Chicagoland. She didn't die from an infection in her shell, but now supposedly she just, if she were to go outside, she'd get an infection. So the other sanctuary willing to take her, which is called Big and Small Turtle and Tortoise Sanctuary. I think I'm saying that right. And they're in Iowa. The founder of this sanctuary responded to a post that I shared of the article where he states this nonsense, in my opinion. And she claimed it's an outright lie, and that it's an excuse to keep her inside.
Yeah.
So
Right. It's not even medical advice that's been given for spur.
yeah, and I could go on, but we not this last time we testified, but the time before, the second time in November, the animal store's veterinarian who supposedly has cared for Spur for more than 2 decades, she got up to testify in support of the animal store and in support of the owner. And yet she continued to call Spur a he and a him.
No.
Spur is a female. And yet this veterinarian who claims to have, treated Spur for more than 2 decades didn't even know her gender.
That's completely unfortunate.
It's kind of crazy.
It's that's very embarrassing on her part. I mean, to know Spur for 20 years and not even know her gender.
Right.
Oh, okay. So that's one of the campaigns that Chicago Alliance is currently working on. Can you give us some background about Rocky and what happened with?
Yes. So we were alerted to Rocky's situation in January, I believe. So going on a year now. He was found as a pup in Tennessee, as a very young pup. His eyes were not even open yet. And the people who found him thought he was a dog, like a puppy. And so they took him to a local animal shelter. And when the animal shelter realized that he was a coyote, um, I'm not sure the next steps or what transpired, but he was transferred to Illinois. And ever since, he was stuck in a cage in what's called River Trail Nature Center, which is in my opinion, a roadside zoo in the Cook County Forest Preserves, where they take wild animals who either, Robbie, my kitty, I don't know if you can hear him. He's like meowing. He wants my attention. So they take wild animals who either have been injured or, in Rocky's case, imprinted upon by humans, and they just stick them in a cage and for people to look at. And Rocky has no medical conditions, and he can't be released to the wild because he is a social animal, and he actually craves human attention. We have videos of the handlers at River Trail Nature Center going into his cage, and he likes the attention just like a dog. Okay.
Yeah.
Biologically, he's a wild animal, but he is socially like a dog. So imagine a dog being stuck in a cage in the middle of Chicagoland's bitter cold winters, and all he's got is a plastic doghouse. He doesn't have, and coyotes are very social animals. He has no companionship. He gets handlers come in here and there throughout the day to feed him or to refresh his water, but he doesn't have companionship like a dog who lives in a home with a family or who has a fellow companion dog or cat. And the videos we have of Rocky, he paces constantly.
Yeah.
He can't roam, he can't run, he can't burrow. If he gets scared, there are no places for him to hide.
I saw that, which is unfortunate because I know that coyotes have dens and he doesn't even he has nowhere to go.
Yeah, he can hide behind his little plastic doghouse. But how much, how, I don't know how that it's so different than having like an underground den, which the Wild Animal Sanctuary in Colorado, who has offered to take him in free of charge, they're willing to come to Chicagoland and do everything it takes to bring him back.
Wow.
And yet the Cook County officials and their veterinarians one of their veterinarians who spoke out against this plan is an expert in artificial insemination of farm animals. So he's basically a bought and paid for farm veterinarian, animal veterinarian.
What does that have to do with the coyote?
Right. He even claimed that he does not, I don't know his exact wording, but that he did not have coyote experience. So
but
it's
he's
just
representative of
right.
Rocky.
Right. So what it comes down to is, it's 2022, it's almost 2023, and animals are still being bought and sold and displayed like they're props, like they're toys, like they're material goods. And it's time for it to end. And, I've got a lot of goals for CAA and for the partnership, but it seems like I keep hearing about a new story about an animal stuck in a cage in a mall or in a who knows where, and right. It's really should not be happening anymore.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I feel at this point in this time in our world that we should have been more progressed than we are. And I still see how animals are just treated as a commodity and exploited. It's so unfortunate.
Right.
So again, thank you for, championing for Rocky, because I watched his video too, and I was horrified. I was so sad. And, even a human being couldn't live in one room in their house for the rest of their life and just look out the window. It's the same thing for animals, especially wild animals that need to roam, be on the hunt, and, and coyotes are social animals. It doesn't make any sense why he would be detained here.
Right. There was I think might have been last year. I think they'd put a Christmas tree, it was after the holidays, outside his cage. And he was on the inside of his cage smelling this tree through bars. And, the animal doesn't even have trees to like sniff and natural. He has to do it through bars and when they give him one. So there are just so many things wrong with this situation. And, their excuse that he's imprinted upon by humans, and that they use similar excuses to what the animal store says, that if he were to go to sanctuary, who knows if he would survive? Who knows if he would be safe, if another animal might attack him? The fact is people who run animal sanctuaries, especially one that is so well respected as the wild animal sanctuary, they know what they're doing. They do this on a regular basis. They know how to, they're not just going to take Rocky from Chicagoland to Colorado and plop him down and let him run. That's not how they do it. It's a slow, careful introduction between cages so that they can't harm each other. Yet, Chicago's commissioners, or I'm sorry, Cook County commissioners and their experts are just throwing out these fear tactics, that he won't survive, or he'll get sick, or he'll die, or he'll get attacked. And the way I look at it is, number one, I don't believe any of that. I believe that the sanctuaries know how to slowly and carefully introduce animals to each other. And if it doesn't work, then they keep trying, or maybe Rocky does have to be a solo coyote out there, but I don't see that happening whatsoever because he craves attention.
Yeah.
So he hasn't even had the opportunity to befriend another coyote because he was taken from the wild as a pup and then put into a cage. So it's tragic, and it needs to be fixed. Sadly, we've been working on a campaign, and a colleague who we started working with, we just found out this today, that she has filed a lawsuit against the Cook County Forest Preserve.
Really?
Yes. And myself and my colleagues who are working actively on this campaign spoke with the Cook County Commissioner, whose district is where Rocky is at. And he's publicly announced that he supports Rocky's release to sanctuary. And we had a meeting this morning to reconnect. We had a meeting a couple months ago. We had an election in November, so we were waiting for the election to be over. He was reelected, and his goal was to start, working with the newly elected commissioners and urge them to support our humane campaign, because he does as well. But when I told him about this lawsuit, which is not something we did, he basically explained to us, which we already knew, is this is not probably a good idea. A lawsuit can drag out 3 to 5 years. And this is a lawsuit against one of the most powerful counties in the United States, Cook County.
Right.
So there's nothing we can do now. Just hope that the lawsuit does win, and win quickly, so Rocky can get to sanctuary. Otherwise, it's going to be tied up in our legal system, and Rocky's going to pay the price.
Well, can you still continue the campaign as well, even though this is a lawsuit now?
Yes, definitely. And we will. We'll continue to use the strategies we used with other campaigns, where we peacefully reach out to Cook County commissioners and let them know that regardless of what's happening, in the legal arena, please urge them to do the right thing and allow him, and to think about at the end of the day, who we're fighting for. This is not about money. It's not about, status. This is about getting a sentient being who has been basically had his life stolen from him, and he was locked in a cage, and he doesn't deserve to be in captivity and isolation. So that's a very good question. I appreciate you asking. We will keep fighting. CAA will keep fighting. We'll keep putting out actions, urging our volunteers and followers to take a minute or two of their day to reach out to officials and urge them to do the humane thing for this animal.
Yeah, and it's great. I was just going to ask you about that. You have daily action alerts on Facebook, which is you make it so easy for somebody to just go on the page, see what needs to be done, make a call, email, go on Twitter or, Facebook, and reach out to officials.
Yes, sorry to interrupt. Exactly.
I love that. I love that idea. And could you talk more about that so people?
Yeah. And this is something, again, that we incorporated in 2017 during the horse carriage campaign. And, I realized that everybody's so busy, right? We all have our jobs, we have family, we have a lot going on, and we're all bombarded with social. If you're on social media, you're bombarded with all kinds of, things coming at you, urging you to do this, sign that. So my goal was to make these as easy as possible. And sometimes people look at them and they get intimidated because I do provide a lot of information. But the ultimate goal is 1 minute of people's time. And to contact whoever the target is. And when I say target, that's not a negative term. It simply means the person we're reaching out to that day. And then I urge people to make contact in only one way, whatever way they prefer. So if they're comfortable making a phone call and either talking to the person who answers the phone or leaving a voicemail, or sending a Facebook message, which is so easy it might be the easiest way to do it and I say one sentence. So where I say in my action, I say today's DAA is to urge Philadelphia City Council member, Joe Jones to ban horse carriages. That's all we're asking is one sentence saying, dear council member, please ban horse carriages. Hit send or leave that voicemail. I'm just urging the city council member to ban horse carriages. And then you hang up. That's it. And we're not asking people to contact them every way we provide, just one way. And if you're taking more than 1 minute, I tell people you're taking too long because it's really, once that official or decision maker gets, 4 or 5 calls, messages, they're not going to sit and read, a very, very long email. They get the gist of what we want, in my opinion. Yeah. So, I personally do take more than a minute usually because I like to tweet and I try to craft it and provide a video and tag other officials. But this is what I do full time. I work on animal advocacy full time. When the people who have jobs and, 1 minute is all we ask. And they don't have to do it that day. If they're busy that day and they want to do it on the weekend, that's good too, because then that action or that person is getting messages trickling into them, not all in one day. And the other good thing about it is, unlike auto messages where you simply click send to the official, which is an auto email, typically, which sometimes, or maybe a lot of times, can go to spam because that official is getting hundreds, if not thousands, of emails of the same email going to their inbox. So it could go to their spam folder. What makes these DAAs powerful is the official is getting kind of hit multiple ways. They're getting phone calls, they're getting voicemails, they're getting Facebook messages, tweets. If we have a website contact form for the official, I'll add that. So they're getting contacted through their website. They could be getting Instagram messages. So that's when people do it individually and they use their own words, that's really much more powerful than, I'd say even, thousands of the same email.
I agree. Because now you're actually getting a taste of each individual by them crafting their own words. And even if it's one sentence. Right, exactly. And the other thing is, a lot of times people will say, well, you need to give us a script. And I do. The script is today's DAA is to urge them to ban bull riding. That was today's DAA is the bull riding is coming to the Hoffman Estates, a suburb of Chicago, in February. And so today's date action is to urge the mayor of Hoffman Estates to ban the bull rides coming in February. That's the pitch. I don't need to provide you a script. That's all you have to say. If you want to share the video that I provide of a bull breaking his leg at a bull riding event, you can do it. If you want to describe it, you can. If you just want to say ban bull riding, that's fine too. But that everybody's going to write it in their own way. So that official is going to get multiple messages, multiple ways,
in multiple, um, everybody's saying it in their own way. And
Right.
that
Different
is far more
platforms.
powerful. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you find out about all of these animals that like Spur or Rocky or the bullfight or the bull rides that are coming? How do you learn about all of these?
Um, I'm, I'm on social media a lot. I'm on Facebook and Twitter. So anything coming to Chicagoland, I typically become aware of through either through my own research or people let me know. For example, today I got a message from a woman who went into a pet store in Logan Square, which is just a new one that I've heard about. And she said the conditions are awful. And
Oh,
so, I would like to fight every issue I know about, but there's only so much time in the day. So, a lot of times if it's a new issue, I wrote back to her right away and urged her to look into who the alderman is for where that pet store is. And then we can contact that alderman and urge the alderman to, go and visit the store and maybe urge him to do something about it. But I need people to help, with our campaigns because CAA is pretty much me. I run the day to day. I do the DAAs. I do everything related to a nonprofit charity. So fundraising, which I hate doing, but I have to do in order to do this full time, is all up to me. I have no employees, and I'm the one who plans our outreach and plans, when we testify before officials. So people, alert me to new animal cruelty or animal exploitative issues on a regular basis. Unfortunately, I cannot, work on every single one that I'd like to, because again, there's only so much time in the day.
right.
So if, this is kind of letting people know, if you want to fight for something, I'll help and I can help you post a DAA, but they got to help me too. I think sometimes people want, they tell us about something and they want us to do all the work, and we can't. I'm not PETA. I don't have a team of hundreds of employees, and I don't have millions of dollars.
Right.
This is a grassroots, all volunteer organization. And so believe me, I will help you as much as I can, but you got to help too. You got if it's something you need help with, like for example, this pet store in Logan Square, I will do what I can, but I'm hoping this woman will look into the alderman. And so,
Right. And it makes sense anyway that the more voices, the stronger we are. One voice can make an impact, but many voices can do much more than that. They can actually help produce change.
right. Which is with these DAAs, I really, CAA only has just over 3,000 members. That's not a lot of people when you think about it. Actually, when we banned the horse carriages, and I spoke at the license committee when it was in the license committee, I remember my testimony that day saying on behalf of CAA's 1,700 members. So that was half of what we've got now, and that was in 2020. So I've got, there are people out there doing our actions, and not everybody lets us know, and that's okay. I mean, ideally, I urge people to comment how they took action after doing so, because for multiple reasons. That helps boost the post, but it also helps me to know how many people are actually doing it, so that if I speak with officials, I can mention that.
Right.
There are reasons around, why I ask for people to write, but they don't have to. But I think many people do them who don't comment how, and because we are making a difference. And, we have our two big successes, banning horse carriages and shutting down the puppy mill stores in Chicago. But we have other successes that, might not be so considered so big. But for example, we did a DAA. This was shortly after CAA started. There was a festival in Chicago. There were two festivals in Chicago, street fests that had like camel rides and pony rides, and we got two of them to stop having animals at their fests.
That's
And
amazing work.
Yeah, one was Taste of Lincoln Avenue, which my friend Sally, who, well, I became friends with her because she wanted to see these animals. She lives by the area where Taste of Lincoln Avenue was held. And she would see these ponies walking, in circles in the heat, and she hated it. So we had a mutual friend, and Sally reached out to me, and we started doing DAAs to the alderwoman where Taste of Lincoln happened, as well as to the people who put on Taste of Lincoln, Taste of Lincoln Avenue, and we got them to commit to no longer having animals at their fest. We did the same thing with the Puerto Rican fest, and within days, I got an email from the um, I don't know his title, but the person who ran the Taste of or the Puerto Rican fest, who told us he will stop having animals at his fest.
Beautiful.
So, so these actions are very powerful, and I'm very proud of them.
As you should be. And, what's amazing is that it doesn't always take a whole lot. Sometimes the people that are in charge of these, fests, maybe they don't realize that, these animals are being exploited. Maybe they are not truly understanding what is entailed in their lives. And when somebody speaks out about it, you're raising awareness. And that person that ran the Puerto Rican fest was like, okay, it's done.
Right. I mean, I think we only did, if I recall, I think we only did one DAA on him, maybe two at the most. I know it, I know it wasn't more than two. And when I got that email, I was just thrilled because it didn't take long at all. And it was a very polite, email from him, and I thanked him, and, I urged my followers to thank him, you
Yeah.
know, and so that was like it was in a way, it wasn't a lot of fanfare, it wasn't like 2.5 year campaign, but it was a big success because, you look at these two street festivals that no longer pay people to come and exploit animals for the weekend.
Right.
And so the more we can get festivals or, whatever facilities to stop hiring these exploiters, that will put them out of business. That will put animal exploiters out of business, and they'll realize there's no money in the animal exploitation game, and that I've got to maybe change my business model, which is, our goal.
Yeah.
And let me just tell you another quick success that happened recently was another town in Massachusetts they were trying to bring horse racing to this town. And Horse Racing Wrongs had a campaign too. They worked on it as well. So this is not CAA taking full credit, but we did a DAA on it, and urged people to reach out to the board of this town. And the town is called Hardwick, and it's a small, I believe, little town in Massachusetts. And we reached out to the town's board. Honestly, I think it was like 3 people. And at the beginning of the week, they said the following week, they were going to make a decision, and they were going to let the people of the community decide. Then we did a DAA on it, and I urged people to reach out to the board and share all of the killings, how horses die daily from horse racing around the country and around the world. And people did, and people took action. And the next day, there was an article in the paper saying that the board had a meeting and decided to say no to the horse racing plan.
Awesome.
And again, earlier in the week, they said that they were going to let the community decide and that they would make a decision the following week. And a day after our DAA, there's an article how they all of a sudden said, no, it's up to us, and we're not bringing horse racing to our town. So
Amazing.
I gotta say, that had something to do with it.
Yeah. And, it makes you feel good when you see a win for animals.
Oh, yeah.
Because we work so hard to give them their freedom and the respect and compassion that they deserve. And when you see a win like that, it's like, you know, you could just ride on that coattail forever because
Right.
it's huge. It's a huge benefit for all of those horses.
Exactly. And what you had said about, officials don't always know. I mean, look, and that is 100% true. People don't always think about, for the horse carriages or pony rides as being an exploitative event. They think, horses have been doing this. Ponies walk around in a circle and they're fine. And so, what my friend Sally was saying about these pony rides is that they would be walking around this turnstile in the sun all day. She said she never saw the handlers give them water and that they were just working in the direct hot sun all day. And so, when you share this information and the videos, of the horse racing kills, we have the documentation that proves why this is wrong. The bull riding DAA I did today, I shared a video of a bull breaking his leg at a bull riding event last September, October.
Oh, wow.
So, we have a lot of times we have the video footage or we have the documentation. And officials just aren't always aware. And so one thing I run into with other animal activists that they say often is, my officials don't care. No officials care. And I warn animal rights activists to think that way, to not think that way, because a lot of people in politics or legislators, they have companion animals like we do. They have cats and dogs, and they have a general sense of being good. And so we have to give them a chance. I mean, you look at our horse carriage campaign. When we started in 2015, one of the first things I did was reach out to the 2 aldermen where the horses worked in the area that they worked. They never returned my calls. They never returned my calls. Even after the second time we proved that the horses were being worked more than double what the law allowed, I reached out to them. He didn't return my call. However, less than a month later, he introduced the ordinance to ban horse carriages. And then you fast forward to March of 2020, when we finally get our second hearing in the license committee. And one of the horse carriage owners got up there to testify, and he claimed that we lie, that we edit our video footage and we doctor our footage. And he slandered us. And he basically said, that we burn, or one, I don't think it was him, but one of them said we burned down their barn. And after he was done, both Alderman Riley and Alderman Hopkins adamantly defended me, CAA, and my volunteers, and said, you can't call these people liars because they care about animals. It was the city of Chicago that cited and fined your companies, not the Chicago Alliance for Animals. So you go from, these aldermen not returning our calls. And yeah, that's easy for someone to say, well, they don't care, but then it's our job as animal advocates to prove to officials, to make them care, because most people have a heart, but you've got to show them. And we showed them the violations. We showed them how, horse carriage operators slapped the horses once that we got on video. We showed them how one of the operators threw a lit cigarette down at the horse's feet. They don't see this. It's our job to see it, to document it, and then to share it with them. And that's what we did. And then they were on our side.
Wow. I love that story. You really paint a really nice picture of just, be kind, raise awareness, be persistent.
Yep.
Would these be, I guess, what would be your best advice for other animal advocates when they are wanting to do an outreach to the public, to city officials, to legislators? What is the best, I guess, frame of mind for somebody that wants to make a positive outcome for animals to have, while they're doing these action alerts or just trying to make a difference for animals?
Well, I believe that you always have to use a multi-pronged approach. One, if, for example, the horse carriages, I don't think we would have been successful had we just done one thing. Sometimes people say, just do petitions. In my opinion, petitions are not enough. It's
No, they're
one
not.
strategy. It's one strategy, and it's an important strategy. And every campaign I have, I include a petition. I have a petition for Rocky. I have a petition for Spur, but you can't rely on a petition. You can't rely on auto emails that you ask people to hit, click, and send. That's not enough. So I'm always open and thinking about new strategies. I mean, sometimes I get my most like new ideas, like when I'm kind of waking up and I'm like, oh, I should try that. So one thing I would say is don't rely on just what we've done in the past. So it's an animal rights issue, get a petition. Yes, get a petition, but also do DAAs and call them whatever the heck you want. You don't have to call them a DAA, whatever you want to call them, but ask your people, your volunteers, your supporters, people who care about the issue to call those in power, call the people who can stop it. So if it's a local issue, your city council. If it's a state issue, your state senators, your state representatives, your governor, do that. If you can document the issue for bull riding, for example, go and try to document the bull riding, show how cruel it is. So you get the footage on video, and then the next DAA to that, legislator, you send that footage to them. So it's a multi-pronged approach. Also, testifying before officials. I urge everybody, if you are working on a campaign in your city, you got to figure out how your city allows public comment. Chicago allows public comment at 30 minutes at each of their city council meetings. For 2 years, myself and others would go and testify. And when they first started allowing it, it was first come, first serve. So we had to get to City Hall at 7 a.m. for a 10 a.m. meeting. We had to sit there for three hours before they'd let us in about 9:30, but it didn't start till 10. But we basically sat on the floor for 2.5 hours waiting. So we'd be one of the first 10 people to speak. So, I urge anyone working on a campaign, go and testify before your city council, urge them to ban whatever it is or do whatever it is you're trying to do. And then, of course, meet with your city council. Everybody has somebody who represents them. And you can find out who represents you by going online. In Chicago, for example, you just type in, who is my alderman? And then a link will come up. You put in your home address, and that will tell you who your alderman is. And then give them a call or send them an email and say, hi, my name's Jodie. I am your constituent, or I live in your ward. Would like to set up a meeting with you. They work for you. So a lot of people are afraid to do this, but you shouldn't be. I mean, I get that, you might be. If that's the case, I'm always willing to go with anyone. If you want to go meet with your city council member and you're maybe a little intimidated or whatever, I can always go as someone who can maybe speak to the animal issue, and you would go as their constituent. So that, just throwing that out there. But these are things that, combined help pass humane legislation.
Yeah, I like that. You're trying to get it from every angle, which is so helpful. And it's really important, like you said, to meet in person. And I know it can be daunting to meet a city official or a senator, legislator in person to talk about these issues that you care about. But if you think about it, you're going there because you have some background, some knowledge about what you have passion for and what you want to see changed. And
Right.
a lot of times they're not aware of certain issues, and you're just bringing it to light.
Mm-hmm. And, and if you are intimidated by it, or, just think about what the animals are going through, and maybe try to think of it in that light, that, it might be a little nerve-wracking for you or scary, but what you're doing is very, minor compared to what that animal lives through day in and day out. So sometimes we have to step outside of our comfort zone to do what the best for the voiceless. And in our world, animals simply don't have a voice. Do they have voices? Of course they do, but their voices can't protect them from the harm that we do to them. So, again, I'm always willing to talk with people and help them, guide them to how to go about these things. I've been doing it for a long time now. And, there was a woman in Indianapolis, one of my partners, who's working on banning horse carriages there. And I reached out to her and I said, would you be willing to contact your city council member? And she said to me, and she responded, she's like, I'm not sure if I'm comfortable with that. And I tried to, slowly guide her and say, I get it. But it's as simple as making a call saying, hi, I live in your district. Can I have a Zoom call with you? A lot of times in this new post-COVID world, we don't have to meet in person. We don't have to go out of our way and drive somewhere. We can do it all on Zoom, like you and I are doing this call right now. Right. So all these things are doable, and phone calls are, emails can be a minute or so long. So, but yeah, I think that in order to pass humane legislation, looking at multiple strategies is always a good idea and the way to go to, not just one way works.
Thank you for that, Jodie. I really appreciate that. That was very helpful. Yeah, and it's so true. So true. Where can people learn more about CAA and the daily action alerts and get involved?
Well, we do the majority of our work on Facebook. So if you do want to really be involved, the best thing to do is, if you're not on Facebook, join CAA by just going to Chicago Alliance for Animals and joining our group. We also are very active on on Twitter. Our handle is at CHI Animal Rights. But if, we also have a website. Unfortunately, it's not kept up to date because, again, that's not something I always get to. I'm hoping to get back on that or get maybe someone to help me keep our website up to date. Of course, there's the Partnership to Ban Horse Carriages Worldwide, and that is also a Facebook page as well as Twitter at Ban Horse Carriage with one R because I didn't have enough characters. And, they could always reach out via email. It's Chicago Alliance for Animals at Gmail, and it's Chicago Alliance FOR Animals at gmail.com.
Thank you, Jodie. It's been such an honor and a pleasure to speak with you today. I admire your persistence and dedication and your compassion for all of these animals and all the amazing work that you have done in a short amount of time.
Well, I greatly appreciate your kind words and this opportunity. It means a lot to me to hear, but I'm here for the animals, and the more people who will join CAA in our campaigns is really what, will help us liberate more animals and more exploitative cruelty and free more animals. So thank you for this opportunity for letting me talk about it and letting people know about it.
Oh, of course. Of course. Yeah, maybe you can come on again in the future and just give some updates about Spur and Rocky and maybe some new campaigns that you have new endeavors on. So
I'd love to.